Last week I went 3-1 in my predictions, technically, because I said whichever team I go in favour of in the Ravens-Chargers, the other team will win. I went for the Ravens. My justification was that the Chargers should win because they have a smaller window, and the Chargers won. Call it 2-2, call it 3-1. Also, technically, I got the Bears-Eagles right. Who knew the kicker would be that useless? Although, technically, they called it a blocked kick. So, anyway, onto these week's games. It was tough enough last week. I think, well, certainly there were some upsets, and some of them I was able to guess. Some of them I didn't get right. But the point is, there were some upsets. This week, I think, is even more difficult to call. And we'll start with the Colts at the Chiefs. And talking about the Colts, what else is there to say that I didn't say last week? They've still got Andrew Luck at quarterback. They've still got a great offensive line. Essentially, the first drive against the Texans, it was everything I said happened pretty much in that order. They got a huge play from T.Y. Hilton in the red zone. Eric Ebron scored a touchdown. The offensive line essentially stopped a great pass rush from the Texans doing anything. The only thing I would add this week is that Andrew Luck has lost 3 playoff games in his career, 3 out of 7. 2 of those were against the eventual Super Bowl champions. One of the other ones was against the New England Patriots. The Colts and Andrew Luck do have a problem beating the Patriots, but they're not playing the Patriots this week. They're still hot. They're hotter than they were going against the Texans because they're coming off a strong win there. Second half, maybe a few worries from that. But the Chiefs certainly should be worrying about facing a team like the Colts as hot as they are. So on to the Chiefs, and I'm worried that I may seem like I'm going against them a little too much, but that's because, well, everything they're good at has already been overstated this season through their performances. They're one of the top 3 all-time scoring offenses in NFL history, so why do I need to add on to that with my opinions? However, they've got a few problems. Now, of course, you could call it a playoff curse, you could call it whatever you want, but they do struggle in the playoffs. Something that was pointed out, though, that I do like is that Andy Reid has only ever been one and done in the playoffs with Alex Smith as his quarterback with the Chiefs. When he was with the Eagles before that, he wasn't one and done in the playoffs. So it's not an Andy Reid problem. I'm not saying it's a Chiefs problem, but, you know, as much as that may be something, it's always situational, so that obviously doesn't contribute, but it does add to the amount of pressure that goes onto the Chiefs, and being at home sometimes with that extra pressure isn't the best thing for you. The biggest problem I have with the Chiefs, and the biggest problem I have with people saying that Patrick Mahomes should be the MVP ahead of Drew Brees, is the fact that they have played 6 teams that have had winning records this season, and they've lost to 4 of those 6 teams. They've also beaten one of those 4 teams because they lost and won against the Chargers, but out of 6 teams with winning records, they've lost to 4 of them. They haven't necessarily won a big game all season long, and that's where I would worry for the Chiefs, is can they do it in the playoffs? Because they've already got all the pressure of being one and done since, what is it, 1996 or something. The Chiefs need to get out in front. The Colts are not built to deal with the Chiefs being up by 2 scores, just in the same way the Chiefs are not built to deal with the Colts being up, because the Colts are a clock control offense. The Chiefs are just, you know, if you're behind and you got to pass, we'll take care of that with our pass rush, and you know, by continuing to just pile up points. So I think this game will pretty much be decided by whoever scores first, or whoever can get a decisive lead first. If I'm the Colts and I win the toss, contrary to what most teams do nowadays, I put the ball in the hands of Andrew Luck. I want to go down the field, put 7 on the board, and from the very beginning of the game, I want to put the Chiefs where we want them, and that is behind us having to play catch-up, where we can then get the ball back again, we can run it, we can do whatever we want. The big thing for the Colts is, like I said last week, they're the best team in the NFL on 3rd down, and that will be huge. Being able to keep these long drives going, keeping Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce off the field. You can't score many points if you're not on the field for a lot of time, so that's the key to the game. However, I feel like the Chiefs will win because they should win. Now, I'm going to stick with the Colts on a personal level because I think you just got to ride a hot hand, and in terms of history, the Colts beat them the last time they played them. The Chiefs struggle in the playoffs, but really the Chiefs should be winning this game. Then on to the Cowboys at Rams, where last week the Cowboys dealt with business. They did to Russell Wilson what no other team has done before. They made him go one and done in the playoffs. Not much changes about what I said about him last week, except for the fact, is that interior offensive line good enough to deal with the Rams? Now, of course, Aaron Donald in the middle there will face up not against Travis Frederick, potentially not against 100% Zach Martin, and that could cause them problems. But they're still strong on the defensive side of the ball. Their front 7 is still probably the best sideline to sideline in the NFL because, well, they were last week. Why wouldn't they be this week? And that directly combats one of the strengths of the Rams, that running game which they need to be able to stop, because the Rams, as much as they are very balanced, still need that run game to be able to get the rest of it going. If they can shut that down, they may be able to stop the Rams. The problem is what I said last week, which I didn't think would be a problem last week, but could be this week because they won that game: entitlement. If the Cowboys have an entitlement problem, and I'm not saying they do, but sometimes it seems like they do because they're young and they'll slip up when they really shouldn't. If that happens, this game could be bad for them. If they don't have one, then it's a non-factor and it's got nothing to do with anything. But what will be a problem for them is they're likely, against the Rams, going to have to throw the ball. They're not just going to be able to run and get ahead of the Rams and then, just run the game out. Not going to happen. They're going to have to throw to beat this team. They can do it. They've done it in games. They've thrown successfully, but we saw against the Giants, they also struggle when that's all they're doing. So that will be the big key to that one. Can the Cowboys throw to win the game? And then we move on to the Rams, and the Rams I have the same problem as for the Chiefs, because what do you say about them? It's the Rams. It's the second best offense in the NFL in terms of total yards. It's the second best offense in the NFL in terms of points per game. It's the only offense in the NFL that is top 5 for total passing and rushing yards, but the Rams have averaged 33 points per game. That's big because the Cowboys have scored 33 points per game twice last season. That is it. It's only 2 occasions they've scored more than 33 points, and the Rams average they average 32.9 points, but the point still stands. The Rams put up a lot of points. The Cowboys at times have struggled to put up a lot of points. The big problem for the Rams is that this defense has not played up to expectations. Everybody thought this was going to be the juggernaut franchise of the NFL this season. Look at the offense. They made that stronger with Brandon Cooks, and it was already strong. Look at the defense, all of these superstars that they've got on the team, and it's done absolutely nothing to that level. The only player who's played up to expectations and played above expectations is Aaron Donald. The pressure here is exclusively on the Rams. Everybody is trying to find the next Sean McVay, but if the actual Sean McVay can't win a playoff game, pressure really builds up after that. So they have to win this game from that perspective, and I do believe they will. The Cowboys are good, but I think the Rams, because of the fact they have to do well and because of the fact they are good at the end of the day, even if they had a couple of slip-ups late in the season, they've also won some huge games during the season, and I think they'll take this one. Then moving on to the Chargers at Patriots, where it's still true what I said last week, I do believe, because it's just the relationship I have with the Chargers. Whichever team I say will win, it will probably be the opposite. Now the Chargers, we said it last week, very deep team. It's good that they're still healthy. I thought they might play Henry last week. It was written as if they might, but they decided to save him for this game, so he will very likely suit up for this one. If he's at 80% or above, that will be a big difference for them. But like I said last week, every time they win, it feels like a scrappy, close game. And now that's also been true for the Patriots this season, to be honest. But it was so true in this one. They clearly outclassed the Ravens. The Ravens couldn't do anything on offense. Lamar Jackson kept losing the ball. He fumbled the ball 3 times. He only lost it 1 time. He threw an interception. And still, it came down to the final drive of the Ravens. They could have lost that game if the Ravens went down and scored a touchdown, if Lamar Jackson didn't let go of the ball. So even in that game where they were so comfortably in control the whole game long, they still managed to make it close in the end. And that's what my worry is for them, because luck may run out at some point if you win every game like that where it feels like a scrap. What I think is big in this one is this could be motivation from the 2007 and 2008 2006, 2007 seasons for the Chargers. 2 playoff runs in a row ended by the New England Patriots. 2 players from those teams still on the team in Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates. Now this was the LaDainian Tomlinson Chargers, where you really thought if they get past the Patriots, it's Super Bowl time, and the Patriots stopped them, especially in 2007 in the AFC Championship game. Now maybe a bit of a stretch to go back 10 years for motivation, but the right players are still on the team for that to be relevant. But the Patriots this year have been unrecognizable, and that's not necessarily unrecognizably bad, also unrecognizably good when running the ball. They've really focused on the running game with Sony Michel, and they do that well. If the Chargers, however, can stop that, I think the Patriots will struggle because the receiving game is not the same it's ever been. The big question for me is, where is James White? In the first half of the season, James White averaged over 9 targets a game, and when he averages over 8 targets, the Patriots have won every single game. In the second half of the season, he has averaged just over 6 targets a game. That's an entire 3 less, and it's also below the threshold of when they win games if they get him over that. So if they start using him again, which they started to do a little bit more again at the end of the season, I think they still are a strong team and a dynamic enough team to make most teams worry. But without him, because Julian Edelman isn't catching enough passes, because Rob Gronkowski, who knows, may not be here next year, I think it's all about that running game and then James White off that, because in terms of receivers, there's nobody else really doing much for them. Now, what you can say about the Patriots is they've lost some bad games this season they should not have lost. They lost against teams that aren't even in the playoffs. However, every time they played a playoff team, they won. They beat the Chiefs, they beat the Colts. They are not going to be beaten easily, apart from when they're beaten easily by poor teams. Who knows why that is? But at the end of the day, they haven't lost a game that they should win all season long. And like I said, for the Chiefs, they lost most of the games that they should win if they want to prove themselves as a playoff caliber team. The Patriots did the exact opposite and won every single one of those games. In terms of who wins this one, I'm going to ignore my calling the opposite team. I think the Patriots are at home. I think they haven't lost a key game all season long. And I think they're built for exactly this kind of football, especially in recent years. They've been built for you to underestimate them and then them coming out again and showing everybody that they're still the same team. They may not be, but I think they've got just enough left in the tank to certainly prove it this season. I think the Patriots will take it, but I'm not going to be surprised if the Chargers, making no mistakes, take the game instead. And then the final game of the divisional round is the Eagles at Saints. Now, the Eagles, literally, what can you say about them? Because who knows? They're an enigma. But, you know, they've got 7-11 employees at receiver because one of them is always open. That's what I really felt against the Bears. A great Bears defense. There was always a receiver wide open somewhere. I really want to watch the all-22 tape of that game and steal some of those plays, because those players are ridiculously open sometimes against very good defenders. Now, the Nick Foles thing, and, well, the whole Eagles thing of you call against them, and if they're the underdogs, they'll win the game, still true after I don't know how many games, and it may continue because they're the underdogs again, but you figure it's got to stop at some point, but it really has not been stopping. But they should have lost to the Bears. That is the thing. The Bears should have won that game. It was apparently a blocked kick. It was ruled a blocked kick, so they did actually win the game for themselves. It wasn't just a terrible kick by the kicker. But the fact is, they were in a situation against a better kicker to lose that game. But the Eagles are coming up against the Saints, and the Saints, as far as I'm concerned, are the best team in the NFL. I'll put my money on that. I'll put my name to that. I'll gladly stand by that. They've got a perfectly balanced offense. They can stretch the field, especially now that Ted Ginn is back. They've got Michael Thomas, who can run every route you can imagine. They've got Alvin Kamara, and a dynamic as you can get running back in today's game, alongside Christian McCaffrey and a few other guys, Saquon Barkley, for example. And then you've got Mark Ingram, who can just power it through the tackles. Now, the Saints do have quite a few injury problems, which involve pretty much every single offensive lineman they've got except for the center, so that could factor into this. But you've got Drew Brees. Drew Brees should win MVP this season. He is 13-2. He is clinical, 74% completion percentage. He's thrown 32 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He's a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes was this season, and he's won more important games than Patrick Mahomes has this season. And Drew Brees' touchdown to interception ratio of 6.4 he's one of only 3 players to have that ratio or better when throwing 30 or more touchdowns. The other 2 guys are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And now, I did say last week, give me the Bears all the way to the NFC Championship game, and that is because I believed the Bears would meet the Saints in the NFC Championship game if they won every game. And then I believed they would drop to the Saints. I do believe we will see the Saints in the Super Bowl, but like I said, you call them underdogs and the Eagles will win. I do believe it's got to stop at some point. If someone's going to stop it, it may be the Saints, but then you saw Minnesota last year. But I think the Saints will win this game, and there's plenty of reasons to think that, without being disrespectful to the Eagles, who, at the end of the day, may be one of the best playoff teams we've seen in a long time.